Hello, and welcome to the 14th edition of Talking Solutions, the podcast of the Association for Solution-Focused Hypnotherapy. I'm Sally Hare, and I'd like to start this edition by saying a massive thank you to my co-podcaster and fellow of the AFSFH, Trevor Eddles, who after over 12 years being part of our executive committee, has decided to step down from his role, which means he'll no longer be taking part in Talking Solutions. He's going to be much missed, not least by me, as my podcast co-presenter and producer, as well as all the other contributions he's made to the association. So I just want to send heartfelt thanks to him for all his hard work and support over the years, and to wish him well in his new solution-focused adventures. Today, we'll be talking solutions around the massive topic that is neurodiversity, and my guest is Jackie McCormick. Jackie is a solution-focused hypnotherapist based in South Gloucestershire. She's worked for over 30 years with the voluntary sector, developing and managing services for people who identify as having autism and supporting them and their families and carers. In fact, she trained as a solution-focused hypnotherapist to offer support to neurodiverse families. She also delivers continuing professional development courses on working with adults who identify as autistic. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you. Very nice introduction.
I mean, I identify as being neurotypical or neuroboring, but I'm part of a neurodiverse family and I facilitate activities for adults who identify as autistic. Jackie, I wonder how you identify and how you got involved with the neurodiverse community.
So when I was 12, 13, I was diagnosed as being maladjusted, which is a phrase that is quite a negative phrase.
Good.
Anyway, it was of the time, so we can't knock it. And I was assessed and diagnosed and sent to a special school for maladjusted girls. So it sounds a bit like the school, but it was a really good thing for me. And I have some memories that weren't so fond,
Yeah.
but really good memories because it sorted me out, essentially, because I struggled with social sort of situations and understanding the rules of society, and got terribly bullied as a teenager when I went to secondary school. So that obviously affected my mental health. So going into the residential school, and it was a small school, and it was very sort of therapeutic based. Right. So lots of analysing our navels, inside out, upside down, and all which ways, everywhere. However, what that did for me was it kind of set me on a path to, even at the age of 16, when I left that school, thinking this is something I want to do, not necessarily to work with as it was then regarded as maladjusted individuals, but to go into the world. So I did a course at college and all that kind of stuff. And then when I worked in the field of learning disability much later in my life, so I guess what I'm saying is I am or was neurodiverse. Now that's a phrase that I am learning to use, as is most of society. But to me, it's me, and it happened to me, and I can't disregard it. I'm not saying it made me what I am today, because I find that's a wee bit odd, but it helped me on the pathway to what I do. And it also definitely gave me huge empathy to understand what it's like to live in residential care. And that's, of course, what I do. I run a charity that provides services for autistic adults, and they are in full-time residential care. And we'll go on to talk about the sort of subgroup that I work with, but it definitely, being neurodiverse, which I guess I still am, it hasn't left me. I've learned to manage it, and I've learned to kind of understand it. It helped me to have real empathy for the complexities of society not getting us. Because I was locked away from society, which sounds traumatic, but it was the solution.
Tidy them up, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Get rid of her. She's. But anyway, so that's, I guess, how I identify. I don't really identify as anything. I'm just Jackie, But if we're looking into why I do what I do, then that's part of the reason why I do what I do.
I mean, I think it's been a really positive step to identify a neurodiverse community, something that embraces diversity such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, Tourette's, power in numbers. In your experience, what are the challenges that neurodiverse individuals can experience negotiating a society that doesn't always consider their needs?
Huge challenges. So from when I started my working career in working with individuals with learning disability and then transferred over to autism, we're talking 35, nearly 40 years ago, there was as there is still a great lack of understanding. We hear phrases like, oh, we've all got a bit of autism in us. Now that for us professionals drives us, and for the individuals drives us bonkers. Everybody's got a bit of autism. Everybody's got a bit of OCD. No, you haven't. You really haven't. So I think, and I think that's quite disrespectful to individuals that do experience those complexities, because we don't all say we've all got a bit of a broken leg or we've all got a bit of a heart issue.
Yeah, good point.
We just don't, and I think it's really disrespectful. I get why people do it and say it, and they don't mean any harm by it. But I think for individuals, certainly that I have worked with all my career, autism is an incredibly challenging, lifelong developmental condition. And to kind of disrespect it as well, we're all a bit that way, aren't we? Is kind of diminishing some of the things that these individuals have to work through. So society needs to learn, and we have to be gentle, because otherwise we upset people. But we have to really learn, because lots of people say, oh, well, I know someone who's autistic and they're this and they're that and blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, I'm sure she's autistic. And you haven't got the knowledge to say that or to do that. And I think it's really important that not everybody has to do what I do. Not everybody has to go to university and study and to do all of these courses, because that's my passion. That's my, I feel that the individuals I work with deserve that. But society struggles with difference. We know it does. It just does. And, to kind of say, I sometimes do struggle with the term neurodiversity. Not that I think it's a good term and I think it's important, but I think politically, in my world, it sometimes diminishes the specialisms that are required to understand each group and the sort of the complexities of each kind of condition, if you like. And I think politically it doesn't do these individuals much of a favour sometimes when we're looking at funding issues. And of course that's my background, is fighting for funding. Because everybody, I'm not saying that, everybody's kind of clumped together under one umbrella. And sometimes that might diminish the need of a particular person with a particular, diagnosis. But that's not to say it's important that we raise it as an issue. And it's a good name, if you like. But sometimes we also need to maybe just focus on whether it's epilepsy or it's ADHD or it's whatever it might being maladjusted. Because I was diagnosed as being maladjusted. It wouldn't have been right for me to be under an umbrella that kind of, I need a specific service to help me cope with that issue. So I think individuals do have that are neurodiverse have major challenges, but for each diagnosis there is then another major group of challenges. So we don't want to diminish that. We want to, and I will always fight for recognizing the true needs of individuals with autism, because that's what I do. And ADHD, I work with lots of individuals that have been diagnosed or need a diagnosis of ADHD, and I don't want them to lose that specialism.
I think it is that thing, isn't it, that actually the blanket term neurodiversity brings kind of awareness to the fact that there are many different things there. It's more a part of society than people might assume. I think it's great that there are an increasing number of groups self-advocating and campaigning under the neurodiversity banner. I work with one local to me. But actually, you're quite right that, we shouldn't let that detract from the individual needs of individuals.
Yeah, and of course, everybody is an individual, and everybody's, whether it's autism or ADHD or whatever, it impacts on them differently in lots of positive ways and also lots of negative ways. Society also has a tendency to show the wonderful side, and how people really can, and this is, of course everybody can achieve. I achieve great things, but what they struggle with is showing the sides that I work with on a day-to-day basis, because of course that scares people, because there's a lack of understanding and fear. In the world of autism, it always used to be kind of referred to as the hidden, in those days, disability. We don't necessarily use the word disability so much nowadays, but that was the term that was used, the hidden, because often it is hidden, and these individuals find themselves masking so many of their feelings and experiences and all kinds of things, that they get to kind of autistic burnout, essentially. And lots of people can't mask it. There's lots of individuals on the autistic spectrum that haven't got that ability to mask, and society doesn't really talk about them. Doesn't really highlight some of their difficulties so much. And I was listening to a podcast with Chris Packham. And, Chris talks about his diagnosis and when that came. But Chris is regarded by society as a very intellectual, wonderful man that's in the world of nature. But he was talking about, he's tried to take his own life 3 or 4 times, and some of the complex issues that he experiences because of the way his brain functions. But we don't hear about that very often.
I think, there is an argument is, why should individuals be masking in the first place? Which kind of leads on to, my next question. Why, how do you think society needs to change to be more inclusive? And are you seeing any changes happening? I mean, clearly from being diagnosed as maladjusted and sent away to, there have been
locked
changes.
Yes. I think we do have to be gentle with society, because society has a lot to deal with. I'm society, you're society, and we're in the world of providing a form of therapy. So, but I do think we have to be gentle, because of course people get very threatened and go into their limbic system, their emotional brain, when they don't understand something. So it is about education, but it's also about how society, not individuals, but maybe governments, put the money into education. It has to start with education, always, with everything. And I know that, having gone into schools for years to support teachers and work with families, that teachers now are really struggling, because of course lots of what we used to call special schools have closed down, and the classroom is full of all kinds of people, but the teachers haven't received the kind of training I used to have and do, and the pressures that are put on them are enormous. And so I think, yes, it is education, and it has to start at a very young age, but we have to be gentle with that education and not apply too much "you need to be," because then people are going to back off, because they will be fearful and they will get angry, and we don't need that in society. We need people to be open to looking at difference. And I think helping individuals that either have the diagnosis, don't have the diagnosis, but maybe want the diagnosis, to also help educate themselves about their autism or their neurodiversity, and obviously have a voice, but find a way that they can also educate other people to kind of understand. If you listen to people like Temple Grandin and all kinds of individuals with autism who can talk about and share their experiences, of course that's going to teach us all kinds of things. So I think society needs the top down, from government, who provide the funding to train doctors, because when parents, if parents have a child and they think, oh my goodness, there's something not quite right here, where do I go? Nowadays the first step is often you have to just go to your GP. And so if the GPs haven't received training, because GPs aren't, how can we expect them to know everything about everything? And if they haven't received the training and the awareness, that's going to, often I hear stories of, still nowadays, parents, mums are told, because of the way you're managing them. And that still
The
happens, you know.
stereotypes. The refrigerator mother, it was not that long ago, wasn't
Well,
it?
that was the kind of psychodynamic kind of theory around it, was refrigerator mothers that caused autism. I mean, how bonkers is that, really? Completely and utterly. But we've learned from that, haven't we? And we've evolved. So that's important, that we have actually learned that that's woo-woo. That's just completely bonkers.
Yeah.
But mums and dads still get that said to them, but in different ways. What you need to do is just get him a job, he'll be fine. Just, just tell him. He's just doing that on purpose. So that they have to experience that all the time, and in education as well.
Absolutely. And I think, the whole diagnosis process is taking longer now, isn't it? It's just a fuller system with longer waiting. So, and
waiting
the whole
lists.
Funding, in schools is more generalist. There's less sort of statements with funding attracted. It's more, here's a pot to deal with all your neurodiverse.
Everybody. And the waiting lists are horrendous. And then it forces individuals, families into paying, for it, which is fine if you want to do that route and you can afford it. But not everybody can afford it. And then, children and adults, because my main work is adults, working with adults. And so I still get adults in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, who will come to me and say, I think, shall I go for a diagnosis? Now, I would say, well, for some people, do you need it? How do you think the diagnosis will benefit you? If you could maybe work on some strategies and get some support and or therapy, or maybe you don't need the diagnosis, but if you do, because you need a pathway and it will help you to say hello to you and who you are and how you function in life, then it is important. So it's and of course, in my world, they're adults much longer than they are children. It's a much longer period of time, and it's a developmental condition, autism. So of course, throughout your life, things are going to impact on you, and it will change and evolve. And that's my job, is working with that, that subgroup, or whatever you want to sort of label it or call it. And they really do find life quite difficult because of social pressure. To be neurotypical, to cure their autism. And I think when you ask what society needs to do, I think it's not just society, it's professionals within the society as well, in our society, because we shouldn't be trying to cure people, because it's a lifelong condition that these people have to learn to manage, and it changes for them. And there is this huge pressure, certainly in my work, from local authorities and social services to make everybody be neurotypical. But yet there's this huge movement to talk about neurodiversity. But the reality of it is well, why isn't he out working? That young man is incredibly articulate and clever, and and he should be out working like the rest of society. So it is looking at each individual. Of course it is. And it's not to say that these people can't go to work. Of course they can. They have incredible skills. But not all people, not everybody. We're looking at numbers, and we're looking, I think the recent study I read was like 1 in 52 individuals with autism. It's huge percentage of society. And then if you put it under the neurodiversity umbrella, then we're looking at 1 in 10 or something, I think now.
So until this glorious future happens, where the funding's in place and the training's in place, and how can solution focused hypnotherapy help individuals who identify as autistic, neurodiverse?
So I mean, I know lots of colleagues in the world of solution focused work that do work with individuals and help with the relaxation, help to calm the mind down, help them to focus maybe a bit more. The work I do is more with the families and the parents to help those individuals to kind of come up with their solutions to help support their child and or their husband, or whatever it might be. And that works really, really well. The work I do, often I do get people contact me. I then switch into my autism work, so that's quite, because obviously I can see it quite clearly, and I might then help them with, because in the world of solution focus, we don't necessarily give solutions. We enable the individual to find their solution. So what I sometimes will do is that I will then say, look, these strategies would help you, with things like going on holidays or applying for a new job and that kind of stuff, because of course that's my main work, is that I can help them with understanding their autism. But certainly I think the solution focused hypnotherapy, if the individual can cope with the sensory process of the hypnotherapy and or the use of language, so if they're able to tune into that and make sense of that, then there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't benefit from it. I think maybe if we're talking to therapists, it's just be aware of use of language, be aware of time for processing information, be aware of your sensory environment, that, if an individual is coming into your service and they are autistic, then they may be impacted by the busyness of your room. If your room's got lots of colour or, stuff like that. So it's to be aware of that. That's not to say it's going to, they're not going to enjoy it, but they might not be able to focus if they're focusing on bright lights or sounds or the busyness of your clothes or whatever it might be. And that's going back to when individuals can mask for many, many years, learn to mask. There's an individual that I was talking to, and she was saying, within the world of autism, it's often said that people can't give eye contact, can't use eye contact. The reality of that is that they don't need to, but it's neurotypical people that find that difficult, because we most of our kind of language, if you like, 70-80% of our communication is non-verbal. So we pick up on the language of facial expressions. Now, this individual was saying, I struggle to look at somebody's eyes because they move around all the time. And so I find a spot on their face and I focus on that. But then often she gets told, what are you looking at? Right. So that's hard for her, because she's found a way of masking her difficulties with looking at people's eyes. And of course, people struggle with it because she's a highly intelligent person, incredibly articulate, and they put a bit of pressure on her, to look at me. And she finds that actually quite painful. It's physically painful for her. So she's found a way of masking, but that now is causing her issues because people are confronting her with it.
So, I mean, if someone's listening who does identify as neurodiverse, or, think that perhaps they'd like to go for a diagnosis and they are finding life challenging at the moment, what suggestions would you make to empower them to, improve their well-being today?
Well, I think certainly if they're looking for a diagnosis, the first thing is to talk, is to tell somebody, to feel safe in that it's okay to tell somebody you're struggling, and or to write it down, to send it in an email to somebody. If you struggle to actually physically talk to someone, then send an email or a text message or write to somebody. You might find it difficult to use the phone. So again, it might be easy for you to send emails and stuff. But often at the moment, your first port of call would be your GP. That's the process for getting a diagnosis at the moment. You can go privately. You can contact certain places. There's a few private diagnostic centres. Their waiting lists are quite long and they are quite expensive. However, they are there, which is a good thing. They are a good thing. But the first thing really is to feel that what you're saying is okay. What you're saying is good. That you're finding life a bit tricky. And it's okay to say that. It's good to say that for you. And it's okay to ask for support and help. Doesn't mean you're failing. It's a good thing. And if you ask people you trust and you feel safe with, then they will help you.
Thank you. That's really, really, sound advice, Jackie. Thanks very much. So what's happening for you at the moment? What's going on? Any projects coming up, developments?
Well, I'm still running the charity. It's a charity in name, but we provide residential support to adults with autism. And I'm at the age of 61. I'm still doing it. Still doing it. I mean, I will be stepping back from that probably, maybe next year, possibly. She says, but within my work of solution focused work, I have branched out. I am working with a lot more individuals with ADHD and supporting them and their families, also to get diagnosis, but to help them manage their ADHD and to feel good and feel safe. And also within my solution focused work, I have branched out into working within the equine community. So that's not autism related. However, of course, there's always, oh, Jackie, yes, I've got this client. She's autistic. So I work with to sort of do performance sports psychology stuff as well. Yeah. Which for me, of course, is slightly different. Which is good for me because it just kind of gets me to branch off a wee bit. But so I did a course with a guy called Charlie Unwin, sort of sports psychologist, and I bring in the solution focused work into that as well. And of course, for individuals that have lost their confidence or competition nerves and all that kind of stuff. So I use my solution focused work for that. And of course, I love horses, so I'm fulfilling my obsession.
That's what we like to hear.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, I so am. It's wonderful. Yeah, no, it really is. And in the world of autism, which is obviously that's we just continue to try and educating and supporting and fighting the sort of political arena, really.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks so much, Jackie. It's been really, really great talking to you. You can find information about our other podcasts on our website, www.afsfh.com. And you'll also find articles, information and resources, plus, of course, our solution-focused hypnotherapist directory, where you'll be able to look through the profiles of our fully qualified members and choose just the right therapist for you. Next time, I'll be talking to Tracy Grist, Chair of the National Council for Hypnotherapy, about narcissism and the effects of narcissistic abuse. But until then, I'm Sally from the AFSFH, and this has been Talking Solutions.